Hello, revolutionary thinking. I am here with Maria Heller, who is a journalist and radio personality who has her own show, and she's had the Maria Show for 19 years, and it's going to be going on 20 years this coming July. And the thing that, Maria likes to talk about is how a lot of things in our society, quite frankly, don't make any sense at all, especially our education system and the way that I think that we are robbing kids out of their future, out of their potential with these universities that charge these exorbitant prices for jobs that you can get without even a high school diploma. So something is going on here, and she's trying, well, I think she's figured out what it is, but more of us need to be paying more attention onto what's going on and what it is. So, Maria, I'd like to start by asking you, since have a lot of experience, how was your education while you were growing up? Were you going to private school, public school, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I went to public school. I went to school in Brooklyn, New York. I would say the year I started school was probably 1955. I graduated high school in 1967, way before you were born, I'm sure. And I will tell you this, at that time, the public school education in New York City was great. It was as good as getting, a college degree by the time you got out of high school. They taught you everything in those days, which they don't teach today. They taught you skill. They taught you critical thinking. You were actually allowed to give your opinion in class. We had civics class. We had homemaking class. And when John Kennedy became president, that's when physical education started in school, which is in a lot of schools across the country today. It's non-existent. And interestingly enough, the high school I went to was Thomas Jefferson. So every day I got to see this big statue of Jefferson as I changed classes, and underneath it were the most impactful words for me: to thine own self be true. So I saw that every day. And, after doing radio for over 20 years now, only 19 online, and I don't think anybody has a podcast longer than mine. When I look at the situation of how things have changed in just my lifetime, I go back to the Rockefellers when they started public education in this country and said they didn't want a nation of thinkers. They wanted a nation of workers. And now you look at today, our children are not being taught civics. They don't know anything about how our government works. They don't know anything about our Bill of Rights, Constitution, Declaration of Independence. This morning I posted on the little social media I'm not banned on, I posted a quote by Thomas Jefferson. And basically Jefferson had said, not so many words, I don't want to get into the whole long thing, but he said that in order to keep our republic, we would probably need a bloody revolution every 25 years. And I look at America now, where we've become a nation of couch potatoes, eating poison, injecting poison, swallowing poison, breathing poison. It's easy to understand why America is so dumbed down. When I was a kid, everything we ate was organic. Okay. I tell the story, when my mother or my grandmother cooked some greens, it was normal as they were cooking in the pot to take a spatula and scrape the buds off. And that's as organic as you can get, finding a worm in your food every now and then. So when people talk to me about what they're eating today, they don't realize that they're being dumbed down systematically by everything in their life, especially TV. I think reality TV was the beginning of the end in this country, where people were worshiping the worst people among us. You know, I had a guest on my show who said it the best I've ever heard it.
Putting stupidity on a pedestal.
What?
Putting stupidity on a pedestal.
Well, he said it even better. He said, we celebritize the worst among us. And now we have a president sitting in office only because he's a celebrity, not a good one or a bad one. I never watched any of his shows. I grew up, 2 years behind him in New York, same city. Queens and Brooklyn is just, it's a bridge away. And growing up, everybody knew what he was. Everybody in New York knew what he was. I doubt he's ever going to be allowed to live in New York again after this fiasco. But we all knew he was stupid. We all knew he was a criminal. We all knew he was a racist. We all knew he was a whore master. This was no surprise. But when you look at America, especially today where they want us to believe something like 40% is still behind him, then you know that the systematic dumbing down of America is complete.
So this school that you went to that taught you all this stuff, and you say it's even better than the universities right now, you think that one has changed?
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you a story. I grew up at the time of the race riots. Okay, so between 1965 and 1967, things were very tenuous in my neighborhood. I mean, there were muggings, there were riots, the cops were unloading cops on horseback, on motorcycles, out of big vans right in front of my house. But my school in 1967, out of all the schools in the 5 boroughs, was actually awarded an award for being the best example of, what did they call it in those days? Integration. Because there was no problems, I was the minority. Because in my school, you were either black or you were Jewish. And I'm one of the only 2 or 3 Italians in the whole school. But the very next year, they had police patrolling the hallways. That's how fast it changed. Because, Americans don't get that we're constantly treated like Pavlovian dogs. They know how to get us to fight with each other, to distract us from taking the fight where it belongs. And unfortunately, most Americans are not smart enough to even know what their rights are anymore. But in my day, that was the way it was, which I happen to think is the reason they want to get rid of all the seniors in this country, kill us either by taking away our Social Security or our Medicare, because we remember a different country. We're before 9/11. I feel sorry for anybody born after 9/11 in 2001 because they don't know any other country. They don't know any other world except this twisted version of a police state.
That's very sad. So you have kids, if I'm not mistaken. Did you send them to public schools, or were
Yeah, my kids went to public schools. My granddaughters went to public schools. But in all fairness, I lived in Long Beach, New York when I had my children. And we had options for schools. We had magnet schools. Children don't all learn the same way. So I believe there are 4 different ways of learning. So you had a choice based on your child's personality and learning ability, whatever their learning skill was, to pick the right school for them. So I was very fortunate, but of course we paid a lot of taxes for those schools. But I was very fortunate, and my kids got a good education because I also did the same thing my parents did when we were in school. I spent a lot of time with them, going over their schoolwork, correcting the lies they were being taught in school, especially with my grandchildren now. One of them came home from school. I had my granddaughter living with me. God, this was 14 years ago when she was 10. And she went to school here in my little dipshit town for a year. And she came home one day and she said that they were going to do a class exercise and they were going to retry the Kennedy assassination. And the local police were going to show up for this event going on. And it was all about the official story. And I said to her, well, you have to do what the school tells you, but here's the truth. And I gave her the truth and I said, ask your teacher if you could present this side of the story. And I did that with Thanksgiving. I did that with Columbus Day, all of it. You can have your curriculum, But if your child doesn't have the right to present an
Right.
opposing view, then it's not a
But
school.
uh, that's true. And but you know the part that really boggles my mind? It's not even the misinformation on historical events. It's just the kind of learning that you need to become a functional adult, like how to find a fulfilling job, how to pay down a mortgage or a rent, what's money all about, what's a credit score, credit cards, how does the money
Right.
work?
These are all the things they don't know about.
I
Exactly. Well, money's always been the mystery. They want to keep it a mystery to Americans. Americans don't realize their money is as good as monopoly money.
Mhm.
Uh, and they don't understand what fiat currency is. They don't, and then you have everybody else, let's return to the gold standard. That's an impossibility. There's not enough gold in the world to cover all the phony money we have out there.
Mm.
But I see it. I see it with my grandchildren more than my children. They graduated high school, worst education system in the world in Arizona.
Mm.
Uh, they graduated, they can't figure out a tip when they go to a restaurant. They don't know percentages. They don't know simple math. They
Mhm.
can't tell time unless it's digital. They wouldn't know how to read a map if their life depended on it. So, God forbid we get an EMP strike or the sun decides to throw something special our way. These kids are going to be lost. They're not going to know how to do anything. They're not teaching them how to keep house. They're not teaching about a budget. They're not teaching them work skills. I'm a strong proponent in instead of going to college, learn a trade because you're going to be able to support yourself if you have a trade. I think it'll be a while before robots are doing our plumbing.
Mhm.
But my dad used to say people go to college to get stupid, and I used to think he was wrong. But the longer I live, the smarter my parents become in my mind.
That's amazing to me. Why do you think that people aren't up in arms over their children being exploited? It just
Because parents today, outside of the top 1%, parents today don't have time to parent. They
Mhm.
just don't. Everybody wants to believe we have this great economy. Well, it's great if you're at the top or you own 84% of the stock market. But for the average person, and I know plenty of them, parents and grandparents, especially a lot of grandparents in my town, raising their grandchildren because their kids are all locked up or strung out on drugs. Uh, they're working 2, 3 jobs. They come home, they're exhausted. The
Mhm.
nothing they're eating is putting any nutrition in their bodies, so their brains are not working right. They've always got a phone or something attached to their head, which is frying their brain. No one wants to sit in the quiet anymore and just be alone with their thoughts. And listen, if I was working 2 or 3 jobs a day, by the time I came home, I'd probably want to do the same thing. Just open the fridge, grab a beer, pop something in the microwave, and pass out. So this is all part of it's. It's been done to us systematically. It's not by accident. Look at what the government gets away with because people are disinterested or too tired to pay attention. And
Mhm.
when television came along, when I was a kid, I mean, I hate to keep going back there, but you're young, so you don't know what the world was like. So I hope this entertains you. I remember the first TV, and we didn't have one. Okay. One wealthy neighbor down the street, we were all living in the same slum, but they had more money than us, and they lived on the ground floor of a tenement building. They got the first TV in the neighborhood. So what they would do, and there wasn't 24-hour programming, that didn't exist. You had about 3 channels. Some of them were on maybe 8 hours a day. But by midnight, even that last one was giving you that woo, and it was off the air. But that one neighbor would open up her shades on her window and allow everybody in the neighborhood to stand outside the window to look in at her television.
Mm. You think it's
Uh,
a coincidence that we're being flooded with so much information these days?
I don't even know if it's information because you know what? I don't have TV. I haven't paid for TV in my house for, God, it's got to be 20 years. but I do have like Netflix and Prime and Hulu.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
you have so much stuff that you could be looking at, and yet night after night I surf, and there's nothing that I want to spend my time watching. Very little. So what they do is bombard you with useless information. It's like the soma pill coming through the TV. And when I was a kid, we weren't allowed to just come home from school and sit down and put the TV on. TV was not used as a babysitter when I was a child. Today, it's an automatic. Worse than that, young parents are giving their children iPods, their babies, infants, iPods or phones, and they don't realize the damage that's doing to them physically, let alone mentally,
And
because
they
I
can't
find
even
it
have
very
a
isolating.
conversation.
What?
And they can't even have a conversation.
No, I see it even with my own granddaughters. They don't even want to talk on the phone to their friends. They'd rather text than even speak. It's not even, you don't have an in-person conversation anymore. And when I do answer the phone, oh, I was going to leave a message, which means you didn't want to talk to me. So I always say, well, I'll hang up and you can leave the message. Okay. So TV was used as a treat. There were certain nights my dad would let us sit and watch a show after dinner. If we watched TV, we watched it as a family. But it wasn't what it is today, where, okay, I do understand what we're doing right now is replace TV. I predicted this 20 years ago when I started my show. I said the internet's going to replace it all. It's going to replace newspapers, retail, TV, all of it, and radio. And that's exactly what happened. Because I am a futurist, I tend to see the future, and sometimes it's a pretty ugly thing.
So we're kind of witnessing the disintegration of like our families and our communities. Like everybody's in their own little bubble. You know?
Absolutely. You know, when I was a kid, they talked about the nuclear family, but that didn't exist in my neighborhood. It didn't exist in any neighborhood I knew of as a child. And when I say as a child, I'm talking well into, I would say that the real shift happened probably when I was approaching 40. Okay. But up until then, no matter what, even if you moved, your family moved with you. Your extended family. We were all in the same neighborhood. But today it's not like that. And when they talked about the danger of the nuclear family, when that started happening and the family broke up, then you had less and less people caring about anybody. But imagine growing up in a real impactful, tons of people living on the same street, but everybody knew everybody. If your parent was out, they knew all the other parents on the block were going to watch you. It didn't matter who it was that got sick in the neighborhood. Everyone went and took care of them. It was a real neighborhood. And people say, oh, you New Yorkers are so cold and this. That's not the truth of it. I grew up, it was an extremely tight neighborhood. Then even when I moved to Long Beach, it was the same thing. Everybody was friends with everybody. Everybody looked out for each other. Everybody looked out for each other's kids. So it's only been the past 30 years, and I could attribute a lot of it to technology, that we've been isolated more than we've been pulled together. And I know people want to argue with me when I say social media isn't worth anything anymore. Because for a lot of shut-ins, it's a good thing. But so many people that aren't shut-ins make it their whole life. And they don't pick up a book. You know, books are passé. They don't want to learn anything. They're not going to watch a documentary. They will rather watch, you know, Honey Boo Boo or, you know, some other trashy show. I can't understand it. I can't even fathom it. I can't get the attraction to that kind of thing because I was taught from when I was a little child, even before school, to learn. My father wanted us reading and writing before we went to school. That was the way it was in those days. But today, you know, we have a world where people are 30 years old and they're still trying to figure out what are they going to do with their life and when are they going to move out of their parents' house. You know, back in the day, you knew when you were 18, you were out the door and you looked forward to it. Both sides looked forward to it. To your
Right.
parents, it was a rite of passage, and to you, it was a rite of passage.
But could you really blame the young people after all they've been propagandized?
Well, no,
You
I
know?
don't know. I don't blame. Well, listen, I live right down the street from a high school. So every day at 3:30, I watch these kids walk past my house, and I could see their souls are shattered. Their body language alone, even walking to school, is actually worse than when they walk home from school because they're dreading it. And I can see them, and I know they just had all their life force sucked out of them for 8 hours, and they got nothing out of it. But on the other hand, you got to put the parents in that too, because parents became so permissive. Just throw money at the kid. Don't spend time with the kid. Allow your son or your daughter to just be a lazy bum. Don't teach them, to get a part-time job. Listen, both my kids had part-time jobs by the time they were 13. I had to teach them the value of money. Today, nobody wants to work. Kids don't understand that money isn't just some magic number on their cell phone or a credit card has no limit. You know what I mean? They just don't get it. So for me, parents are 50% too. You can't dump all of this on the education department. But you have a lot of
Right.
selfish parents too that want to be eternally young. Okay. I got news for everybody. Everything, no one can beat the law of gravity. Okay. And I don't care how many surgeries you have or whatever you do, your body's still going to go down. You're not going to be a debutante at 50. Okay. That ship has sailed. But I see a lot of that where no one wants to grow up. And if the parents don't want to grow up, how are they going to
Mm,
raise how are they going to raise decent adults out of their children? I just don't see it.
yeah,
And
that's
I'm not saying that's everybody, because I do meet and work with some fabulous young people. But I
right.
put in the hours with them, and they're not my kids. And I put in hours teaching these kids because
Yeah.
somebody has to.
So then how did you get your first job?
Well, back in my day, I'm going to go to that again. I'm going to play the old lady card. When I was a kid, you couldn't work until you were 13. You had to get working papers. You actually had to file like a state paper to have permission to go to work. My father had 5 children at the time, so we were 7 people living on a barber's salary. So there wasn't a lot of money to go around. So I wanted to earn my own money. So I went and I filed and I succeeded to get my working papers. But a lot of places I went wouldn't hire me because I was 13. So I got lucky and I had to get on a train after school in Brooklyn. I would take a train into Manhattan to a part-time job I got in an insurance company,
Mm,
paying $1.10 an hour.
mm.
That was minimum wage. Okay. So
See?
my first paycheck was $13 net. And now remember, I had to spend 2 hours on the subway to make that $1.10. 1 hour going, 1 hour coming. Then I had to come home, which was usually 9 o'clock at night, and do my homework for school the next day. And at the end of that week, I had $13. Now let's talk about money. I had 6 other people in my family, and in those days, I think the subway tokens to get on the subway to go back and forth to work were like $5 a week. So what I did is I took $5 to make sure I had enough money to get to work the next week. And with the other $8, I bought everyone in my family a gift. And they weren't crappy gifts. In downtown Manhattan in those days, you could get a box set of a tie and a handkerchief for $1. So I felt so proud of myself to be able to do that with my very first paycheck. Today, with $13, you can't even get, what, 6, maybe 5 gallons of gas.
Right.
So when you look at even minimum wage, you want this country should be making minimum wage. If you look at that next to price increase, should be $33 an hour.
Right.
And I only had 2 children, and I remember my father said to me, "Are you going to have more children?" And I said, and this was the 70s, and I said to my father, "It's too expensive to have more children." I says, you know, milk's not 25 cents a gallon anymore, and bread's not 18 cents a loaf anymore. And that was in the 70s, which, you know, was mild compared to now. You know, the other day I went to the grocery store, and I live alone. I'm one person. I eat vegetarian, so it's not like I'm buying a lot of crap. It was $100 and I had 3 bags. So unless we can lift people up, I don't see how these young people can ever get out of poverty in this country. I had the chance.
That's insane.
I know.
I mean, it's bad enough that they don't teach you anything about money, and then they tell you to take out a loan
Right.
before you've even had your first job.
Well, you know, if you read, you know, because you know I do a lot of news on my show, not that I'm limited
Mhm.
to news shows, but millennials have said that they could afford to buy a house if they didn't have to pay their student loans, but their student loans are gagging them so badly that they can't save up enough for a deposit. And they know they're never going to have the lifestyle their parents had. They're not going to live as long. They certainly don't have the opportunity. You
Hmm.
know, there
Seems
we
like
were, you know, poor as poor could be. But I was able, you know, by the time I was in my
no,
20s, to
right.
buy my first house.
It seems like the colleges have just stabbed the younger generation in the back.
Well, I totally agree. And a lot, listen, I have friends that are on Social Security.
Yeah.
And now Social Security, they're dinging your Social Security check for your student loans.
Wow. That you're just a debt slave could be for your life.
Exactly. So, you know, the average person, maybe you're getting $1,000 a month in Social Security. But remember, they force you to have Medicare, which
Mm.
they take out of that. It's not free.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're left with maybe $700 or $800. Now you're supposed to live on that for a month. But now think about it. On $700 or $800, they now will ding you for your student loans too. So basically, you're a debt slave from the minute you're born till the minute you die.
That's terrible. I mean, I don't know why people are talking about it. Do you want to know what bothers me the most? My
Now what?
university called me up and
Uh,
asked me for a donation.
Did you tell them you donated 4 years of your life and you didn't have a cent?
Right, I know. It's like basically, think about it, Maria. Somebody stabs you in the back, takes the
Right.
knife out, and says, "Hey, you got your blood all over my knife. Can you clean it up?"
Exactly. Exactly.
It's
Listen, I mean, look, the world would be a better place if money wasn't a part of the equation. You know, imagine a world where human beings could use their intelligence for beautiful things,
mm-hmm,
to heal the
mm-hmm,
planet, to heal other people, to spend time on beautiful art, philosophy. I've always felt that we should have as president, I'd rather have a philosopher. I'd rather have an atheist. Okay. You look at what we've devolved into. You know, people always say to me, Maria, who was your favorite president? And I tell them, listen, when I was born, Harry Truman was president. I don't really remember Harry Truman, but I do remember Eisenhower and all the presidents since. John Kennedy was the last truly elected president we ever had.
mm-hmm.
So once that coup happened and his murder gave the, what does Trump like to call it, the deep state, you look at people, the same people pick both candidates every time, so they never lose. And when you try to explain to people that your vote doesn't count and your vote isn't counted, they argue with you. And they still believe that by some miracle we're all going to vote and just change the world. But
Right.
we never get to pick the candidates.
You know something, Maria? Some other countries around the world have scientists on their money, philosophers on their money, poets, technology people on their money, not politicians.
No, I agree. I agree. Look, but then you look at, you know, when you have a hero,
Mm-hmm.
just say Harriet Tubman, okay? Look
Mm-hmm.
at all the hatred and crap that goes on just to put her face on our money. She was a hero,
Mm-hmm.
but of course she was a woman and she was black. So whew, everybody has to go crazy.
Right.
Uh,
And
but it's not even what we have on our money or other countries have on their money. We have nothing but idiots running this country.
100%.
Billionaires. You know,
Just,
you look at Congress, it's a complete millionaire billionaire society. It
it's a
doesn't
shit
matter.
show.
What?
It's a shit show.
It's worse than that. And how can we actually, I mean, when I was a kid, we learned taxation without representation. Well, we have that. Who's representing us? If
Owen.
you have a millionaire Congress, you got a supposed millionaire president. Do you think they understand what our daily life is like? Dreading your electric bill, trying to figure out, should I put gas in my car or buy food? So we don't have representation. But to get all Americans to stop paying their taxes or get out in the street with a yellow vest, it's like a pipe dream because everybody has taken the Soma pill. They all have a drug of choice, whatever it is. It could be anything from their
Whoa.
television to
That's
a legitimate drug.
not to mention the pharmaceutical companies. Like,
Absolutely.
everyone's depressed. And why do you think that is?
Right. Well, you know, I report on it all the time that we have an increase in suicides, especially people between the ages of 26 and 30. And they call them deaths of despair. I never heard of things like this when I was a kid. The diseases they confabulate these days, none of them existed when I was a kid. I don't remember ever, not one person or one child diagnosed with autism when I was a kid. It's just the truth of it. We all had the measles. We all had the mumps. We all lived. I think that they've weaponized a lot of these diseases.
Well, what do you think of ADD, ADHD?
I think it's all made up.
It's BS. It just,
Listen, a
yeah.
young person's mind needs nutrition, okay? So if their brain is not fully developed, then of course it's not going to work right. But what are their parents doing about it? Feeding them more McDonald's, more chemicals, soda, nothing but chemical soup. I was around before Coke and Pepsi, okay? Hard to imagine. We had, for us to have soda, it had to be Sunday or a special treat. And we had people in those days used to deliver soda in glass bottles to your house. And you had two flavors, cream soda or ginger ale. Coke came out after that, you know. If we were allowed to have a half a glass with dinner once a week, that was a lot. And that was real ginger ale. I challenge you to go in your store and pick up a bottle of ginger ale that actually says there's any ginger in it. Okay, but ginger is very healing. So when we were sick, my father would give us warm ginger ale because it worked, because it was real ginger. But everything today is chemical soup, and that's what you're feeding your child. So unless you understand what the human body needs, there's no way your kids are going to function or be able to think or not be sickly. It would be a physical impossibility. But, you know, even when I was a child, I'll tell you something else. Because we are a roly-poly society. I mean, we are fat people, okay? And nobody, oh, don't use the word fat. What am I going to do? Say obese, okay? You're fat, you're fat. I mean, we weren't politically correct in Brooklyn, and I'm still not, and I never will be. But I can tell you this, in my entire school building, where there was so many kids, maybe one kid was fat. And that poor kid got tortured, okay? Today, it's the reverse. You do a double take. If a kid's not fat, you wonder, are they on a sports team? What happened here? I mean, all you got to do is walk into any Walmart where I don't shop, but I used to have to go in because my bank was in there. It's like a freak show to me, okay? And I'm not putting people down. They don't even understand why they're fat. When I talk to people that say, you know, I'm not eating more, I'm going to the gym, I'm just not losing the weight, they don't understand your body has already become so toxic that if you don't detox all those poisons, there's no way you're going to lose the fat, okay? So I feel sorry for people that are trying that hard, okay? But they don't realize whatever you're putting in your mouth is loaded
Right,
with chemicals.
right. And you mentioned our politicians, like technology has already fundamentally changed our society, but all of our congressmen and our education system have been staying kind of like where you
Yeah.
were when you were growing up.
They're fossils. Listen, I
Right,
love technology. I figured this out, right? I
right.
mean, when I tell people, people assume that I have like a team of people helping me with my show, with the bookings, with the website. I do it all myself.
Hmm.
And only my close friends know that if there's an occasion and you want to make Meria happy, buy her technology. Okay. So, but I use it for good. I don't waste
Hmm.
my time on this, making this my life. I mean, once I'm done with my work, what I need to do for my show, I don't want to see a computer the rest of the day, you know. But if you're just going to use it to jerk around, or in this weird world where everybody decides to send pictures of their genitalia to each other, I don't know when that became attractive as a
That's
dating point.
ridiculous.
But imagine if people listen. It's like any other tool. You always have a choice to either use it for good or you use it for bad. It's like that I do a lot of psychic work too because I'm just gifted that way and I like it. So there are people that'll do spiritual readings for people with bad intention. So they'll use the same tools, but they use it for bad intention. So it's the same thing with your computer, your phone, whatever. What's your intention? It's the intention of the user. But I am strongly against giving any child under the age of 18 technology or any of these psychotropic drugs. None of these drugs have been tested on or proven to be good for anybody under 18 because your brain is not fully formed yet. And yet I see so many parents, the kids like 6 years old, I'm going to buy them an iPhone. And I'm like, what? So, listen, it starts with parenting, but it's not, I'm not saying they're bad parents. They're just not educated parents.
Hmm.
And I put out that education all the time, from diet to technology to the news to spirituality to environmental stuff. You have to know everything that's going on now in this world if you want to survive.
So speaking of being a parent, your grandkids, were they born in the 80s, 90s, or
90s. In
okay
the
then
90s.
okay
My
and then
grandchildren are 22 and 24.
okay. So how are they navigating through the world right now as all these changes are going on?
Well, I'll tell you.
Mhm.
When I listen to my children, and my
Mhm.
children are in their 40s,
Mhm.
it's like listening to myself.
Mhm.
So I know I've done my job. When I listen to my granddaughters, it's like listening to myself and listening to my daughter. And
Mhm.
what freaks my granddaughter out the most is when she calls me for advice. After I give her the advice, she'll call her mother, and word for word, she said, her mother will tell her the exact same thing that I just told her. So I know I've done my job. So my older granddaughter, uh, she's smart enough to call and ask me for financial knowledge, even when she just got her first apartment with her boyfriend. And she got the thing from the electric company. And she didn't know how to tell which plan is better for her. So she called me and asked me, and I explained the difference to her. My other granddaughter is a rebel without a cause. From when she was a little girl, she knew what she wanted to do. She wanted to be a tattoo artist. Since she's like 3 years old, she knew this. And I always encouraged her art whenever she came over because I used to make my living painting. I would sit down and paint with her and draw with her and constantly. And when all her friends would say, oh, that's stupid, you're never going to do that, blah, 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 I would tell her, don't believe anybody. Artists can make money. I made damn good money when I was an artist. Well, today, after going through 3 years unpaid apprenticeship, she's making her living as a tattoo artist.
Mhm.
So I taught my kids and my grandchildren to never lose sight of your dream. Don't fall into the system. Don't listen to the negativity because that kid's talented. If she wasn't talented, believe me,
Got
I
it.
would have
Like
told.
you know, it boggles my mind. She became a tattoo artist, and then the ones who like maybe got their master's degree or their PhD or like working some retail job making
Right. No, well, I'll tell you where they are. They're working for pharmaceutical companies, putting drugs in boxes in the shipping department. So
Right.
I was never one of them. Thank God I had that kind of parents too. They told us whatever you want to be, you can be. You know, my father taught us to be fearless, but that was a very Italian thing in those days. He didn't have sons, so he decided to raise his daughters like they were sons. So yeah, we do draw on our masculine energy a lot. And I've always wanted to succeed at what was always traditionally a male's purview of business. And I did. And whenever I succeed at something, I move on to something else because I get bored.
Mm.
And my kids are the same way. And my daughter is an entrepreneur. She works for herself. She does very well. It's not about the money. It's about,
The
I've told them a
passion.
million times, I want you to do what makes you happy.
Mm. I think
No
that's a,
parents teach their children, you know, to be happy. There was a saying that John Lennon, when he was in school, they asked John Lennon, what do you want to be when you grow up? And his answer was, I want to be happy. And they failed him. They thought that was a ridiculous answer, but he had it right.
right.
Because I could ask you, are you happy? Can you answer that question?
Exactly. If you're going to work and you feel as though your work doesn't matter and if you're not engaged with it, but
Right.
that's the way they made you feel in school and college. So it's like that's why people are getting
Well,
depression.
I got to go back again. Got to go back again to parenting. When I was a kid, listen, I had a big mouth. I always had a big mouth. And I always questioned everything because my father taught me that. He said, question everything, especially authority. So in school, if the teacher was saying something I didn't agree with, I would raise my hand and say, that's bullshit. Why are you teaching us this? That's a lie. And of course, my father would have to come up to school, you know, blah, blah, blah. But he always defended us. He defended our freedom. And his whole thing was, I was born a free moral agent, and so are my children. So are you defending your children in school? Are you protecting your children? You know, when my kids were in school, believe me, I guarantee you the principal had a thicker file on me than my kids because I didn't let them get away with anything. I was at that school all the time. And even with my granddaughter, I did the same thing. And when the school didn't respond to her being bullied, I called the police and filed a complaint. That's when the school responded. So how much, you know, if you're having your children, you need to protect them. You need to protect them from everything. And if you don't want to do that, don't have kids. It's that simple.
100% agreed because the kids don't have a choice in being born.
I remember telling my mother that many times. I didn't ask to be born. And then my mother's answer was, I brought you into this world and I'll take you out too. That's how Italians are. We let
Right.
them out and then we forget about it like 2 minutes later.
Right. Right.
But, you know, the education system, and I mean, it wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. It was still set up by the same people. But there weren't the restrictions now. I guarantee you they would have drugged me to the max if I was born later
Probably
than
gave
the
you
rest.
ADD, ADHD.
Exactly. I'm not
Yikes.
saying that, you know, there aren't children that have something wrong, you know, there's some physiological thing wrong with them, something that's not firing right in their brain. But if you're not willing to change your child's diet, look how many of these kids recover as soon as their parents put them on the right eating plan. Take away the sugar. Sugar's cocaine. Okay. Take away the crap and see, wow, what a difference in my kid's personality. But this is a society where there's a pill for that. Let's
Mm-hmm.
take them to a doctor and sedate this child. I
Mm,
think that a lot of modern children are too smart for the public education system.
for
They're
sure.
bored to shit, and because the kid is bored to shit, then they have to label them. Oh, there's something wrong with this kid. They need to be on a drug.
That was
You know,
me.
they're not performing. But
Yeah.
maybe you're one of those people that is super smart and
Well,
realizes how ridiculous it is.
that was me. I mean, I always wondered like what are these people teaching me about life? I'm not learning about money. I'm not learning about a job. I'm not learning about relationships. I'm
Right.
just being forced to memorize things and
Right.
repeat them. And then I remember raising my hand in class and telling the teacher, it's like, you're making us memorize all these random facts and repeating them. How's this going to help me when I get older?
It doesn't.
And then they said like, oh, you'll find that out in some mysterious way, how it helps you when you get older. And then I'm like, lady, you're full of shit. Like what are you? And here, no, think about it this way. Look, if these teachers are coming to school and they're miserable and they're
They hate it
angry
too.
about their paycheck, and
Mhm.
then they get their misery and their anger and their frustration of their teaching job, and they project it into the classroom, which were some of the teachers I had. Then they make all the kids depressed.
Well, it's
And
not
then
just that. A lot of teachers, because even when I argued with my granddaughter's teacher here, I said, listen, I can't help her with this homework. This math just doesn't make any sense to me. And he looked at me and he said, I agree, but if I don't teach this curriculum, I don't get my paycheck.
that
So now you have this new math that makes no sense, and you have kids who can't figure out fractions, can't figure out percentages, can't figure out anything when it comes to money. And it takes me back, when I was in the ninth grade, I was taking algebra. And one thing about algebra, I told my teacher, this is useless. Where am I ever going to use this in my life? Well, you have to do it. Well, no, I chose not to do it. I sat in the back of the room and played
yeah,
cards with one of my friends.
good.
So I failed the class, and as a punishment, they sent me to an all-boys school for summer school. Oh, that was so terrible.
Big
I was like, um, but yeah, like I said, if it was today, they'd probably suspend me or kick me out. The only good thing about my mouth in school
deal.
was I got through high school with an 100 average. I mean, I was the smartest kid in the
Right.
school. I thought all the other kids had something mentally wrong with them because I was like, oh God, is it going to take them a week to learn something I just taught myself in 5 minutes? So even though I spent a lot of time at the principal's office, they couldn't do anything to me because my grades were so high.
Right.
So I used to tell them, I justify your salary.
Maria, have you ever heard of the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Oh yeah, I've seen that movie quite a few times.
Uh,
Nurse Ratched.
it just reminds me of our education system.
Well, it is. It's an insane asylum. It is
Right.
an insane asylum. Like I told you, I see those poor kids. They walk home like Willy Loman.
Right. But it's funny. Like what the teacher says. Like you said, I agree with you. But if I don't do this, I don't get my paycheck.
Right.
Who's providing the paycheck? Who's making the curriculum? Who have we ever asked them any questions?
No,
Have we ever?
it's always whatever the state wants. I was reading, and I have the story for my next news show. That they just passed the law, and I don't know if I don't think it's nationwide yet. Where they now are going to teach the Bible in public school. Now, to me, what happened to separation of church and state? Okay, and not everybody in this country gives a crap about the Bible or is a Christian. If this is a Christian country, I don't see much proof of that.
Yeah.
But you look at that and you're like, what has that got to do with anything? But then we have a vice president who believes in Noah's Ark and creationism. I mean, we're becoming dumber and dumber as a society. Look at Trump. Even in his Twitter flurry this weekend, he misspelled Kentucky and misspelled the word stolen. This is the president of the United States. I'm in such disgust and awe of his stupidity and ignorance on every level. And I'm like, and I guarantee you, he went to a private school. He might have been better off going to PS13 instead because he's a moron. Okay? He's as dumb could be. He thinks General Lee was a great general. I mean, George Washington didn't brand his house right. I'm like, what kind of a moron is this?
But what kind of people elect a moron?
Well, this is the problem. So you look, I have a lot of good friends and listeners that live in the South. I feel sorry for them. Okay.
Hmm.
Because when you look at the Bible Belt, that's where most of the pornography consumed in this country is in the Bible Belt. Most of the racism and hatred and these anti-abortion, anti-freedom laws are all there. And when I grew up in New York, people used to say, you New Yorkers, when you look out your window, all you see is California. And I didn't get that at first. But then I got older and I started traveling through some of these states. And I actually questioned in my mind, why did we even want these states in the Civil War? Because they're still fighting the Civil War in any state you go to there. They act like they won. I saw the level of racism, which I did not grow up with in New York, the ignorance. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. When New Yorkers look out their window, they only see California because we're the only progressive states. Everything really good comes out of those two states, whether it was music, whether it was invention, technology. Silicon Valley is not in Georgia, okay? And there's a reason. So when I look at the ignorance in this country, and that's Trump's base. You know, I
Right.
just
Yeah.
tried on Instagram for the first time to do a little video because I'm new to Instagram, but for whatever reason, I'm getting a lot of people joining it. So I said, okay, it's the rare time I put some makeup on. So I'll try to put a little video up. And all I said was, I grew up 2 years behind Trump in New York. We all knew what he was. It's amazing to me everybody else fell for it. Now, I could understand that they were sheltered and stupid, but I can't understand how they still can back him now. I mean, if you didn't
Right.
wake up in the past 2 years, you might as well
Right.
just go to sleep and never wake up again.
Well, I don't know if you've heard of this. Have you heard of a presidential candidate? His name is Andrew Yang.
I've seen him. He's a Silicon Valley guy. I've listened to little what he says. I like his ideas with technology. I think we need to have a young person in office because the majority of Americans now are not baby boomers. They're the millennials. You have no representation if you get another. And I like Bernie Sanders, don't get me wrong, but you need to have young people. I like Mayor Pete. I don't like his position on Israel, but you know what? They all kiss Israel's ass, except for Bernie. And he's a Jew, and he took Netanyahu on. But you guys need to have somebody young.
Especially, I agree 100% because my whole life just felt like I was being propagandized
There
by
you go.
things that I had no control over and just had control over me and were never listening to me. Like the high schools and the education system, they taught me how to be poor. They got all of my creativity and my talent and my love for adventure, and they destroyed it.
Well, that's what they
And
want, to keep you poor. Look,
exactly.
that's the whole basis of religion. Religion still gives you a
Right.
reward. I don't care what religion it is.
Mhm.
Think about it. Religion is one of the biggest scams on this planet. Be poor and be happy to be poor, because if you were rich, you're not going to get into God's kingdom. Or be poor and be a slave, because when you die, we're going to give you, 12 virgins or 100 virgins.
Well,
You know,
well, what
what
what's
is
the
it? The
promise?
Mormons, they're going to give you your own planet. So it's the best scam going. Suck
Right.
it in and suffer while you're alive, but we're going to promise you something really good when you're dead. Now,
Well,
Napoleon Bonaparte, one of my favorite sentences is from Napoleon Bonaparte. And he said, religion was invented to keep the poor from murdering the rich.
wow.
And
That's
that was
very
Napoleon Bonaparte, how many hundreds of years ago? So when you look at right now, everybody fighting with everybody else because we have to fight for the little 10% that's left in our economy after the rich keep
the
blood sucking
scraps.
out. Right.
Yeah.
So I had read this book called Survival of the Richest by Donald Jeffries. And I've had him on my show twice. And I honestly believe if every person in this country read that book, we could turn things around this fast, because
Yeah.
he shows you who the real enemy are. We
Yeah.
have to stop fighting each other for scraps and take this fight to the rich, just like in gangs in New York. That's
Right.
where we're at.
And
Otherwise, it's just going to be a
right.
slave
But
society.
not all rich people are like that.
No, they're
I
not.
think, but they're the ones that are just super corrupt.
Well, the ones that are holding tight to, remember, you've got less than 300 people with 80% of the world's wealth.
That's
So
insane.
that means what? 7 billion have to scrap for whatever they can get.
Right.
And I know some people that are very wealthy. I dated some millionaires in my life.
Like we get the leftovers.
Yeah, some of them were very generous, and some of them are not.
Mm-hmm.
But why? I say instead of arguing over minimum wage, we need to create a maximum wage. How
Mm.
much money is enough? Okay. Don't you have enough? You have $5 billion. People down the street from you are living in the street in cardboard boxes. How much money does one person need?
Yeah.
Share the wealth. So I have no problem with democratic socialism,
Hmm.
because right now we don't even have a democracy, and we certainly
No.
don't have any socialism.
Yeah.
But
But
it's just not fair the way
but
the world is
you know
going.
what my problem with Bernie is? He's talking about like free college, but we already know that college isn't teaching you what you need to be a
Yeah, but
functional
you
adult.
know that. You know that. I know that. But
Right.
the average person doesn't know that. To them, that's a
Right.
big status symbol. I'm sending my kid. Look at all these movie stars.
Right.
Look at that Chinese person paid $6.5 million to get a kid into Yale.
That's
Okay.
idiotic.
I mean, what kind of ridiculousness is this? Okay. Just so they could say I had a certificate from a top
Do
school.
you
The
know
kid's
how
still dumb
many
as a rock.
people are committing suicide in these Ivy League schools?
Oh yeah, rape and all kinds of things as part of their, initiation. I mean,
It's
it's very
ridiculous.
sick. It's very sick. What I would like to see is a return to trade schools,
Mm-hmm.
metaphysical schools, like the great learning schools they used to have, where children actually learn skills to help them
Sure.
create magic in their lives.
That's fun.
Meditation, yoga,
Right.
something
And
good.
and
Bring back phys ed.
we've been under the illusion that work is something that should make you sad and should not make you feel like good, but every successful entrepreneur is happy with what they do.
Of
They're
course,
not
because they're
bored.
doing what they love to do. When I was a kid, everybody's parents owned their own business. The
Hmm.
job mentality was something sold to us. We were tricked into it. And in the beginning, it was really good. The money was good. The perks were good. You had full coverage on your health insurance. You got regular raises.
And you're happy doing the work.
And you were happy doing it. And then they immediately, the downhill started. Where now, oh, you have a right to work. Okay, they want to make right to work legal throughout the country. I live in a right to work state. That means you have no rights. You have to take shit from your boss. You're going to
Oh,
make minimum wage. You're not going to have
and
no right to any benefit.
and have you heard of at will employment?
No, at will,
Oh,
no.
okay. Let me tell you something. After you busted your ass in the public schools getting straight A's, after you busted your ass in university getting straight A's, you can get like a minimum wage job, and the employer, for no reason, can just get rid of you the next day if they feel like it.
Well, that's the way it is. But then you got the other side of that where millennials now quit a job and don't even say, I quit. Some
Right.
of them don't even send a text, they just never go back. So a lot of companies now are pissed because young people are doing that. I give those kids props. You've been
Hmm.
treated like crap your whole life. You're being treated like crap. Why even say I quit? In my day, you knew even if you got a better job, you had to at least give 2 weeks notice.
Hmm.
Uh, but today, you can't. There's no point in being loyal to your employer because they're not loyal
Because
to you.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's sickening
Right.
what they. I was told when I was in high school that university was the promised land.
Oh yeah.
So much propaganda. You make $1 million more. These people go, and it's like, but you're gonna regret it for the rest of your life if you don't go. You're gonna have to take down that loan, and when you do it, it's like, well, you should have majored in something else.
Right, but look at how many young people are suing their colleges now because they didn't get the work they were promised. They didn't get those jobs. You know, I
Right.
have clients and people I counsel,
Hmm.
and they get into their mid 50s, and all of a sudden they're training somebody younger for their job because that younger person's coming in at less salary.
Right.
So there's no loyalty.
There's nothing. It's
No.
and then did you hear about the learn to code push? That it's just another version of let them eat cake. We're gonna get like a 60-year-old person who's been like truck driving their entire life and tell them like here, like let's sit you in front of the computer and you're gonna learn how to like program all this stuff, and there probably won't even be a job for you at the
Right.
other end.
Another soul crushing job. That's
Right.
what they are, soul crushing
Yeah,
jobs.
so crushing. What we should be doing is like, what would make sense. Okay, there's a kid right here. What do they like? How could they get that thing they like
Right.
and make money in a way that makes them feel good?
What's
We,
their talent? What's their gift? Everybody has something.
yeah,
Listen, there are people that are really good at being waitresses and they like being waitresses. So when I see a waitress who's all nasty and whatnot, I'll say to them, you know, if you hate your job, why don't you just give it up? Because there are other people that would enjoy it.
mm-hmm.
You know, go find something else you want to do.
Now the worst is becoming a teacher or professor and hating your job because you have a captive audience.
Well, and they're limited. You know, you don't understand. Teachers today are stuck. They have to teach a certain curriculum, and if they go sideways on it, their job is over.
Right.
I believe and always have believed teachers should be paid a minimum of $100,000 a year. They have the most important job, which is you're entrusting your children to them every day to, you know, affect their mind and their
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
abilities. If teachers were actually getting paid what they should be instead of sports stars or politicians,
Yeah.
we would have a different world. But remember, they don't
Right.
want our children to learn. You remember when
Right.
Bush was president, is our children learning? He couldn't
Right.
even say that sentence right.
Ironic. The funny thing is that but here's the part that bothers me the most. We're not questioning where is this curriculum coming from because it's destroying us.
It's
You know,
coming from a very Arconian agenda
yeah.
from the people that rule this planet.
Hmm.
This planet is definitely ruled by the dark forces. I have no doubt in my mind. If you've never studied the Archon agenda,
No,
Archon, for people that might be hearing it for the first time, or the Illuminati, or all these
hmm.
different secret societies that get
Right.
together and figure out ways to make our lives miserable, keep us stupid, keep us sick, and keep us down.
But you said when you went to the public school, it wasn't like what is right now. When did that start happening? These, you
I
know.
would say it immediately started happening after all the assassinations in the 60s.
Hmm.
I lived through all those assassinations. Imagine being a kid and watching all your heroes get popped off one at a time.
Hmm. See,
Uh,
dramatizing.
it was very traumatizing. It's something I'll never forget, which
Hmm.
is why they'd like, you know, my generation dead because we remember, we witnessed it,
Hmm.
we were there. Now we live in a 1984 society where the president of the United States actually said, don't believe anything you see or hear, which is straight out of 1984. So they want us to even doubt our own sensibilities today. They
Right.
want us to forget what lives inside of us and just be part of, you know, the Robotrons moving around the
So,
planet.
so with your granddaughters, did you said like they came out of school and their math or English skills weren't that good, or were
No,
you and
well,
your
their English skills were always excellent because my daughter, like myself, is an avid reader. So
okay?
she read to her children a lot, so they read. My granddaughters are still always have books around them that they're reading. But their math or life skills, none of that. None of that.
Mm,
You
got it,
know,
got it.
lucky for them, you know, they got an Italian family where they can call and say, how do I cook this? What do I, you know, how do I pay this? You know, uh, but yeah, I would say that judging it, even by the young kids in my own town, I go into a restaurant and you give them, let's say your bill is $10.14. If I give her $10 and say a quarter, or you give them the change, they don't know what to do with that. They don't know how to give you your change back from your dollars because now you introduce coins. So I will always look them in the face and say, how's that new math working out for you?
Right. The
And
Common
then
Core.
I'll always follow that up with, I fear for the future.
Yeah, it's sick. I
Yeah,
mean,
if you got people in their 20s who can't make change, this country's done. Okay, if you can't figure out change, or if you'll notice yourself now, I don't know how it is where you live, but when you go to a restaurant here in Arizona, at the bottom of your credit card bill, when they give you your tab, they list all the tips by percent. You want to pay 12%? Here it is, $5.62, or 15%, 20. And I looked at that the other night with one of my friends, and I said, look, they even tell people what the percent is because people are so stupid they can't figure out 10 or 20%. To me, that's the easiest math. No, I'm no math expert. I told you I didn't care for algebra. But when it comes to money, I am a math expert. That's when, bam.
right. That's when it counts. That's when it affects your life.
Exactly.
Right. But everything that's going to affect our life when we leave these institutions was never there.
No, of course not.
Like
You shut
that.
you out all unprepared. It's like being a new parent. You
It,
take a baby home, but you don't get a book on what to do with
right, right.
it.
No, it's like they dig a ditch for you right when you get out of that gate, and you spend so many
Exactly.
years of your life trying to climb out the ditch that they dug for you.
Yeah,
It's
but right now you're doing what you want to do.
yeah,
Despite all that, you're doing what you want to do. You're starting to live your passion.
yeah.
Imagine if all young people lived their passion.
That
What we could create.
that's what I'm trying to do here, Maria, because I just see all of this, and I remember like I was younger and I was just confused. Like these people aren't helping me, these people aren't
Right,
guiding me, these people aren't
right.
telling me what's going to happen for the rest of my life, and they're just telling me to trust them, and I didn't, and now I was right.
Yes, you were. Listen, I always say it. I have couple of variations. The only thing I trust the government to do is kill us all. The only thing I trust medicine to do is kill us all. So you're free, feel free to use that in any way you want. Because if
Right.
people think that these beings supposedly above us care about us, that's your first mistake.
I mean, but it should be obvious to people. Every you know what when
People
I
want to believe. Most people don't have a backbone to want to
oh my
stand up
God.
and do anything. They want someone else to take care of it, someone else to
Right.
fix it, someone else to protest. They're waiting for a
I
messiah.
I was at the California gubernatorial debate in USC,
Uh-huh.
and it was in the thing, and then the dean came up and we said we have this many students who have graduated, but then I wanted to say, like, don't clap for him. How many of those students who graduated actually have jobs that they like and they want? They just
Right.
say they graduated.
Big deal. And then what? They can go wait online to get a job at McDonald's or Starbucks.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And okay, so
It's
so
sad. It's very
what,
sad.
it's like, here you took 4 years of your life, we gave you this piece of paper, you owe us a shit ton of money, and we're not going to tell you how you can make
Right.
that money to give back to us.
Well, I like Elizabeth Warren wanted to get rid of all student loan debt. I
Right.
don't see why not. If you've got, $2 trillion to give to rich corporations and rich bastards that don't deserve it,
Right.
then just eliminate that. If you know as well as I do, all of this stuff is just a couple of buttons on a computer and it's gone.
Right. Yeah, it's just a couple of buttons, but they enslave our potential, our creativity.
Well,
It's like,
that's part of the reason. That's what
right.
they want.
When I was young, I loved going to the California Science Center because, I mean, I love seeing all that science and
Right.
technology. So you already know I like this stuff. To hell with it. Just put me in an environment where I'm surrounded by those things and I'm learning about those things,
But
and
then you might become
stop.
smarter than they are. You might become a environmentalist. You might actually tell them, This is really happening. The glaciers are actually melting. You know,
I mean,
this week, I think it was 1,200 dead dolphins washed up on the shore. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how much more you need to know, but of course, you got to get religious people believe that the earth is theirs to abuse any way they want because they're going to have their rapture. Okay.
All right.
They don't think about the next generation. You know, I think about the next generation, not just because I have
Thank you.
kids and grandchildren. I've been doing this for decades, you know, as an environmentalist, as a spiritual teacher, just trying to say, what are we going to leave our kids? You know, I don't want my grandchildren not to be able to go into the ocean and take a swim. Or, you know, in the 60s, we had a song, you know, paved paradise, put up a parking lot. And the words in that, I'm sure you never heard it, but you should
No.
YouTube it when we're done. Pave paradise, put up a parking lot, where they talk about having to put the last trees we have in a museum and having to pay, you know, 50 cents just to see them. Okay.
Wow.
That was in the 60s. I was aware of this. So I live, I don't have an ecological footprint at all. You know, remember Al Gore when he came out, test your footprint.
Uh-huh.
I did mine and I didn't even register. I have no footprint. Okay. But yet one of my sisters who has money, she visited me. And I guess it was too much for her for me to take my my canvas shopping bags in my Prius to the store after I shut the lights off in the house before we left. And she said to me, "You live like a European." And I looked at her and I said, "And you say it like there's something wrong with that." You know, so when people say, "Oh, Maria, you're not using weed killer on your lawn, you're out there raking and pulling by hand, you know, we got a new invention called weed killer," I would tell my neighbors, where do you think that poison goes? It's going to go in the ground, it's going to go into soil, it's going to go into groundwater. You know, it's good exercise, all right? Instead of just spraying Monsanto's cancer-causing poisons all over the planet. So yeah, when I see these environmental stories, that gets me the hottest under the collar because I've been preaching about this and teaching about this for 40 years. And now all I see all these years later is it's worse than ever. So it kind of makes you feel like your work didn't matter. But then I see how many other people's lives did change because of my work. So then I'm okay with it.
Wow. Yeah. So what advice would you have for anyone's trying to break in a kind of radio industry or kind of do any of those things?
Well, you know, when I started, I don't, maybe there were 3
Things have changed.
podcasts, okay? Today,
Uh,
there's so much competition out there to do a
mm,
podcast. I like what you're doing. I like the video. But it's hard. You've got to find your people, you know, yeah, and you can't just be a one-man band. You can't just talk about the same shit all the time or you're going to lose your audience. But if you could keep it interesting, which I've managed to do for over 20 years, so for me, maybe it'll help you. When I look at something or a topic or somebody sends me a book they want to, you know, try to get on the show, whatever, my guide is if I'm interested in it, my audience will find it interesting because I kind of know my audience. Because if they didn't find it interesting, they would have left a long time ago. So you have to find what part of the world you can change, okay? And change happens one person at a time. So, you know, it could be your age group. It could be people that think like you, people that are looking for the kind of shows you do. But no matter what, get rid of negative people in your life. Get rid of people that don't fully support who you are. Do the best you can with your diet, with exercise, with water, with good sleep. Because to me, your generation and younger, you guys are going to have to mutate to a very poisoned world in order to live. And I think the human body probably is capable of mutating for all the filth that we've created on this planet. But you got to do what makes you happy. And you have to be fearless. You can't fear the state. You can't fear this and that. I'm sure I'm on every list known to man. Okay. And I don't really care. What are they going to do? The worst they could do is kill me.
right.
So, well, no more
Well,
bills to pay.
here's the thing, though. Remember when you were talking about all these platforms banning you? But that's because they don't have the intellectual capacity to debate. It's so easy to just say, "I'm not talking to you." Bye. It's another thing when you say, "Okay, let's look. Let's look this
Listen,
stuff up and let's debate." You know what I'm saying?
if at this point in my life, at
Hmm.
almost 70 years old, I can have the honor of getting banned, suspended, whatever. What it tells me, like I said to you earlier, when I listen to my kids and my grandchildren, I know I did my job. The
Hmm.
more these people hate me and ban me and whatever, the more I realize I've done my job, because there is only one truth, and truth hurts. So if
Yeah.
being a truth teller bothers these people, if I'm such a big threat, like my son says, little old grandma living in the woods, such a big threat, then I did my job.
Right.
That's what a real American,
Like
a
with
real
all
American, a real patriot.
yeah, with all their trillions of dollars and their army and their intelligence agencies and their spies, and they're afraid of you.
Makes me feel good.
Right.
Listen, if it's either them loving me or fearing me, I take the fear any day of the week.
Right. Because it's like all I want to do is get to the bottom of all this. It doesn't make sense
It's a
that
bottomless pit. Once you start going down the rabbit hole, there's no end to it.
right. Yeah,
And that's
that's true.
why I keep so many shows on my site on so many
Mhm.
different topics. To me, that's a college education, a real college
Mhm.
education. You
Mhm.
get through those 700 hours I have there, you're going to know everything you need to know.
Right.
But you know what? I can't force people to do it.
Of course.
People are okay watching, reality TV. Those are not
Kardashians.
people I'm not interested in these people.
Yeah, I'm not either. I
I was looking on Instagram and they had a picture of Kardashian at some net ball or some bullshit. She's wearing basically a totally see-through dress. Uh,
Mhm.
and I commented on it and I said, and she wants to be taken seriously as an attorney. She
Mhm.
wants to be an attorney without going to law school. That's the other thing. Okay, because now if Trump
Mhm.
could be president, I guess you could be an attorney
Right.
without going to law school.
Right.
So back to celebritizing the worst among us.
Right.
Here we had a guy like Steve Jobs who deserved to be celebritized. He didn't make a big deal over who he was. Uh, even Elon Musk, they'll look at a million reasons to try to demonize him. Oh, he smokes pot. Well, yeah, most great thinkers smoke pot. That's where they get their ideas from. But if it's trash, oh yeah, let's worship that.
Right. I think all we can do is just attract the like-minded people
Exactly.
who see through all the bullshit.
Right.
They the others can
I
just
tell
get
people you
out of the
got to
way.
be woke. If you're woke, my show's for you. If you're not, move on. And
Right.
I'm not here to save anybody. Okay.
No.
I'm here on my own personal journey. For whatever comes after this, I want to be in the higher ranks. I don't ever want to be with low entities like what the human race is now. I
Same
never
here.
want to experience this again. I'm never coming back to this planet if it still exists by the time these people are done with it. Because I truly believe nuclear winter is a very real reality. I'd like to not be here for that.
Oh
Um,
God, I'm gonna be for that.
well, you know
Gotta
what?
wait.
You got your little corner of the world right now, and you're just
Right.
getting started. You have to
Right.
stay fearless and you got to stick to your truth. And there will
Mhm.
always be people. The world has always changed with 1%. That's all we
Mhm.
need. 1% of the people to
I'm
change the
willing.
whole thing.
I'm willing because I just look at my childhood as torture. Psychological torture, emotional torture, physical torture due to the way I was educated by this evil system that wanted to co-opt me, wanted to make me a mindless cog in a
Listen,
heartless
I
machine,
tell people all the time now, if ever there was a time to homeschool, this is it.
Yeah.
Homeschool your children. Save them from the teachers with guns, the crazy people with guns, the shitty education, the bullies, all the rest of it, the vaccine issue, blah, blah. Just homeschool your kids. If you're
The
going to have
bullies
kids,
Yeah,
homeschool.
the bullies are making the curriculum.
Yeah, well, the bully, we got a number one bully in chief as president.
Right,
And
exactly.
everybody has to remember, bullies are basically cowards.
Right.
So there you go.
Like a roach when you like shine a light on it and it just goes and hides.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm
That's
shining the light. They're trying to
right,
catch me, but I'm
exactly.
going to keep shining that
Right.
light
Just
until the
keep
day I'm dead.
yeah, I like that spirit because I mean I was growing up confused and frustrated and wondering but now it's all adding up. They're
Right.
doing it on purpose because
Of course.
they don't want us to like be happy to
I
do what we
forget who
love.
it was that said it. It could have been Nixon. I don't remember. But he said everything that nothing in politics happens by chance. It's
Hmm.
all by design. And
Right.
that's the truth of it.
And when I was younger, I'm like, are all these people stupid or are they doing this on purpose?
They're doing
Like,
it on purpose and they're not stupid. Never
mm,
underestimate the power of the darkness. That's my another one
mhm,
of my mottos because there's no limit to how low these people will sink. They have
mm,
no true human qualities. Okay, they don't have any empathy. They have no compassion. They don't know love. They're not human.
they're
Because you look at their
sociopathic.
eyes and you see there's vacancy in there. There's no shine. Just the lights are on and nobody's home.
So we gotta stay away from that. I mean,
Exactly.
right?
Well, I say my site and my show is for my soul group. It's a safe haven for people that actually think and care, and just to make people see you're not alone.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we need because sometimes I mean it does get lonely when
Of
you
course.
go out there and other people are just interested in just the nonsense on the screens.
I know.
And it's like they cannot communicate
I
with
know.
you. They
Well,
just
I
go.
provide the safe space. I can't
Mhm.
force people. The majority of the
Mhm.
people out there, when I just see the idiocy on social media, I don't ever want them listening to my show. I don't ever want them in
Right.
my
It's
space.
just dead weight.
It is. It's like it's a private club, and I get picked.
Yeah.
People say, "Why is it subscriber based?"
Right.
Because
Well,
it's a
well,
private club, and they can't use my material
yeah,
against me in a court of
you,
law that way.
Maria, I this is what I've learned in my life. You save the people who swim towards you, and they have to show you that
Exactly.
they care. And here's another thing that I learned. They said the Coast Guard when they swim toward the helicopter. If I'm gonna have people in my helicopter, they better not run to the controls and try touching all the buttons and moving it, or I'm gonna kick them out.
Well, listen, as a teacher, I've taught other teachers, and this is similar to what you just said. You put your energy where it's deserved, not needed, because
Mhm.
needy people are always going to be needy. That's just the way it is.
Right.
So you have to decide.
And they don't learn and you whatever you try and help them they take it for granted. They don't appreciate it. They're like vampires.
I call
And
them psychic vampires.
right. And I don't need leeches,
No, you
sucking the
don't.
life out of me, you know what I
Right. Well, they might take us back to leeches as a medical treatment, and believe me, we
mean?
don't.
Right,
Who
right.
knows?
But anyway, Maria, this has really been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been great
Talking to
talking with you too. Stay in touch for sure.
for
And let me
sure.
know when this is up and all that so I can get my audience over to it.
I'll definitely let you know, and I will send you the link. Thank
Okay,
you
yeah, I'll
very.
help you out any way I can.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.